I usually just start by showing people this area.
Sure.
This is our toxicology area. As you know, we're experiencing an epidemic of intoxication, an opioid epidemic, fentanyl. We do all of our point of care drug testing in here. So we have a number of instruments that we use that allow us to test bodily fluids at the time of autopsy to determine if drugs are present and are likely to be a cause of death, which helps us make a decision about what formal toxicology testing to perform. So that happens in here. We have specimen storage, and in the back is our anthropology area.
You can just kind of show
Yeah.
us a little show and tell.
Yeah, so these are various devices that we use for drug testing. This is a machine, I'm not going to say the brand name, but it is a point of care testing that will allow us to use blood and will detect approximately 20 common illicit drugs, fentanyl being a common example, methamphetamine, other drugs, and will tell us if they're in the person's system at the time of death. We will test drug paraphernalia, straws, burned foil, M30 tablets that we suspect are fentanyl here, and get some idea if the person had the drugs on their person at the time, and that helps us.
That's amazing.
I don't know what else you want to see back there. We have an insect container, an aquarium for preparing biological specimens, for cleaning bones. We use beetles for that. Most commonly, a maceration technique with water is used, but we do have the ability to use bones for beetles for very fine work. We have a secure evidence facility. For example, I can't access this because I'm part of the team that collects evidence, and it's a different part of the team that releases evidence. But every bag, every box that you see in this room represents most likely a homicide. Somebody is waiting for their evidence to be picked up by law enforcement and for possible analysis by the crime lab, should that be indicated. And so we have a very strict process by which we collect and release evidence, and this room is where that happens here.
Makes sense.
This is our main autopsy suite. We refer to this area with the glass as the fishbowl. And so detectives, attorneys who come to witness an autopsy will watch from behind the glass as we perform the examinations at these stations. What happens is bodies will be brought in from our cooler. We do a full set of photography, and then they are assigned a doctor and a station and a technician, and an examination is performed, after which the body is sewn back up like a surgical procedure, and then available for release to the family. People don't realize that you can have an open casket funeral right after an autopsy. So we do it in a very controlled and careful manner, but we can have a full investigation and then have an open casket afterwards. So when we take every time we do an autopsy on somebody, we will take blood samples. They're actually stored on a piece of paper, a special type of paper called FDA paper, which has special chemicals in it that preserve the DNA. And those are stored on little cards that will remain stable for decades. So in this office, we have racks and racks of FDA cards going back decades, and that can be used to generate a DNA profile. We also take tubes of blood at each autopsy, and they have a special preservative in the tube of blood that preserves DNA. So we can send a tube of blood to, for example, somebody who we suspect has a genetic heart condition, and we can do a medical analysis with that. In persons that come to us in a skeletonized state, we will take samples of bone, and that bone can be used to generate a DNA profile. And that bone is stored in our facility, and often we'll release the body because we have finite space. So, for example, some of our unidentified persons have been buried in an unidentified state, but we have retained samples for bones. We know where they are, and we are hoping to give them a name. but we don't have their full body anymore.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure if a cremation process happens or if a burial process happens, because I can't imagine you have space for.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And so, what we deal with as a public health agency is the continuous threat of a mass fatality incident. We have to have a certain amount of storage space at all times should something happen. We're thinking ahead, the World Cup, various things that are coming down the road. So we always need to have space in our facility if something bad should happen. So we really cannot keep entire bodies here for decades. And so if somebody is unidentified, some of them get buried. We do cremate some of them, but only if we have enough sample that we can then assure ourselves that we could identify them based on that sample. So some do go to cremation. It's just prudent planning to have the ability to handle a surge. And so it's just a matter of numbers and trying to identify people and matching them up with their families.
Yeah.
So we do have a very large, what's called indigent remains program here in the county. These are people that are not necessarily unidentified, but they don't have anybody, or they have been abandoned by their family. And so the county will take care of them. And we have a nice ceremony where we take remains of these people and we inter them and we bring people out. We read their names out loud. And it's actually quite a beautiful ceremony, and the county does this every year, and we have very many people that go through that.
Wow.
So this is the one of the entryways to our main cooler, where we store bodies here who are awaiting examination and are awaiting release to their loved ones. So we can care for at least 100 people in here. There's a secondary cooler attached to it behind this wall that you can't see, and there's a third one downstairs in this building. So we do have quite a bit of capacity, and we typically run, between 60 to 80% of our capacity in terms of having space for people to be here.